This is our first opportunity for the East Longmeadow Public Schools to really begin to present to the community our master plan and our facility study. I'm Gordon Smith, Superintendent of Schools, and before I get too much further in, please feel free. We have a lot of nice refreshments over there, so take some home with you. Meets the wellness policy. So as you exit, make sure you take a parting gift. This evening, what we hope to do is walk you through some of the work that's gone on for really the last 6 or 7 months. And so with me tonight, I have members of the school committee over here. We have members of our East Longmeadow Public School leadership team, and we have our architects from Sims, Maney, and McKee Associates, and Margot Jones Associates. And you'll hear from many of them as we go through the evening. But this work really began in depth in January of 2013, late January. And this group and a few people up on the screen over here, such as Frank Locker, really got into every single area of our school system, every nook and cranny, and has enabled us not only to put the study together, which we're starting to present tonight and start to get community reaction, but they also built a database which will continue to serve the East Longmeadow Public Schools from here, not only throughout this master plan, but for the foreseeable future. In that database, every single area of the school system has been photographed and commented on and given a designation. And we'll walk you through some of that as we go through this evening. So this evening, what we want to take a look at is how do we put this master plan and facility study together. So we'll walk through the visioning portion that took place last spring with Dr. Frank Locker. We'll walk through the enrollment projections that are part of this study and master plan. We'll start to look at options for the East Longmeadow Public Schools and the East Longmeadow community to help keep our buildings, all of our buildings, viable and put our students in the best possible learning environment from here 15, 18 years out. That's what this master plan will start to look at. We'll look at some proposed phases of that plan, capital planning, both on the large scale and on the smaller scale to keep our buildings moving. And then we'll look at the Mass School Building Authority process and how with the larger scale projects, we can get into that pipeline, understand how it works, and get reimbursed for a lot of our investment into really our children and our buildings. And then we'll take a look at next steps and hopefully have time to answer any questions or hear any thoughts that you may have. So, starting with the visioning, on April 25th of last year, Dr. Frank Locker facilitated a group of roughly 42 people from across the school system, across the town. In this picture you see one of our students, a member of the class of 2013, who not only was there, but presented at different times. And that was pretty neat to see. We had students who were involved in where should the East Longmeadow Public Schools go in the next 10, 15 years, and how do we keep our learning environment as viable as possible, pushing our students to reach their fullest potential. And the students who were involved were pretty incredible and really was a great testament not only to all the parents in the room tonight, but our educators pre-K through grade 12. So as we went through that visioning process, we began to unlock one key item that really we've been talking about and emphasizing, but this master plan and facility study will help us continue to put it in place. And that's making sure that our students in all grade levels are beginning to get the opportunity to develop 21st century skills, critical thinking, problem solving, collaborating as they do those things, and then probably most importantly, communicating orally and in a written format extremely well. Those are the skills we want to see our students continue to build at all grade levels. And as we started to unlock different things in the visioning session, we started to, again, connect it back to the facility study portion and figure out how does structure help us do that. And that's some of the things we're going to share tonight. Within the study, we also had the NESDEC group take a look at enrollment projections, look historically, but also then project out 10 years. And as you can see up on the screen here, we hit a high back in 2007 where we had 2,863 students. However, this projection, as it started to look out to the future, obviously looked at birth rate, but it also looked at housing development. It looked at the economic recovery, and it started to look at how East Longmeadow is coming back, as many communities are, from the recession, and not only are there developments right now that are available and on the market, but more to come. And the projection started to look at that we will grow slightly. We will start to move to a potential enrollment of around 2,873. And actually this year, we're already above the projection with 2,764 students as of October 1st. But the projection also looked at how our classes grow kindergarten through grade 12. The class of 2013 that graduated last year started out in 2000 as a kindergarten class of 176 students. But last year as seniors, they had 227 students. So we are a school system that continues to pick up students as they go through from kindergarten or pre-K, kindergarten, all the way through to grade 12. At this point, I'm going to introduce Phil Poignelli from Sims, Maney, and McKee, and he'll start to walk you through categories of options in this plan.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be here this evening and take you through this discussion. This is a process that we've been going through, starting with data collection and interviewing. We interviewed many of the teachers throughout the school district. We interviewed custodians. We interviewed secretaries. Really everyone who is involved in the school, and so part of this is collecting data and then starting with the development of options. And so the options that we've been identifying are items such as code upgrades and replacement of modular classroom buildings at the elementary schools. We've identified looking at capital projects, meaning whether they be major renovations or building replacements. We're looking at capital, so this could be a renovation or replacement. We're also looking at things like 21st century teaching and learning elements, and whether those kinds of devices are used in an interim basis, and we'll talk about that in just a minute, as well as maintenance items, and these are primarily coming from this database where we went through every room in the school district and created a great deal of information on that. So the items, the elements for 21st century teaching and learning, things like classroom furniture is a very important part of that. The idea that currently there are in many of the classrooms, certainly at the high school, single one-piece tablet armchairs that are not very flexible, and it's all set up to face forward. It's all set up for teacher-focused learning, and there's a movement to change to more active classrooms with student engagement and student-centric learning. So changing of furniture can go a long way to changing how teaching and learning takes place in a room. Also, things like different types of spaces, large group instruction, small group instruction spaces. The ability to have additional teaching surfaces within a classroom. So currently you walk into most classrooms, there's a a marker board at the front of the room, and again, set up for teacher-focused learning. The idea that if we are creating flexible environments, we have teaching surfaces on multiple walls within the school. And we'll have diagrams that show you that as we go through. Additional teacher planning area as we change towards project-based and interdisciplinary learning, the idea that teachers need spaces to collaborate in order to make these things happen. And getting to a more robust wireless system and integration of technology, the idea of one-to-one, the idea of a smart piece of smart technology for every student in the school is something that is picking up steam, and a lot of schools are moving in this direction. It's only a matter of time. And then additional electronic projection within the schools as well. And so we've noted some of these spaces where, some of these items where these are all elements for 21st century teaching and learning, but some can be purchased now, and you have the advantage of using them immediately and starting to transform the classrooms. And then if a capital project develops in the future, that they can be taken with you. So furniture and technology are the easiest things to move things ahead quickly and then move them along. And so we're going to go into the database, and as I said, we've been through in every space in the school, and we've evaluated them if they're in adequate condition, in fair condition, in poor condition. We've rated them from an urgency standpoint on safety, health, maintenance, infrastructure, and non-priority, and in each of these categories, we've then further labeled them as desirable, highly desirable, or essential. So, Helen, you're going to take us through that?
Good evening. My name is Helen Fantini. Lorraine has kindly agreed to drive here, but we did want to give you a little bit of a better picture of what we're talking about. Both Gordon and Phil now have referred to this database, this incredible repository of data on every single one of your schools, every single space in every single one of your schools. So this is the landing page of the database. It shows the location within the town of each of the schools. Actually, if you show the reports tab, Lorraine, the data in the database is only as useful as your ability to manipulate it. So this is a portion of the database wherein you can run reports. You can run reports by school, by space type, by condition, by urgency, importance, and the final category is actually by recommendation. So if you decide one summer you want to do all door or window replacements, that's what that final category would enable you to do, is to sort by the recommended action. And then if we could go to Maple Shade. So when you come to the landing page for each of the schools, you have some general data about the school, the square footage, the grades served. There are links to the floor plans of each of the schools, as well as the site plan, some overall photographs. Yeah. And then we just wanted to show an example classroom, Classroom 102. We know there's some photographs. So again, this is where we really get into all of the detail. So all of us architects, engineers, including mechanical, electrical, plumbing, civil, and structural engineers actually took a look at all of these elements. And each space is assessed by characteristics. You can see some of the types of characteristics: accessibility, functional adequacy, does the space function as it was intended, overall physical condition, room finishes, and then drilling down into some more of the technical things: technology, security, power distribution. Are there extension cords running across the floor? Things like that are noted, evaluated, urgency assigned, And then the final two columns talk about what the recommended action would be to improve or correct. And at the bottom, we do have photos of various conditions so that you don't have to just rely on the words, you can get the picture. And so, as Phil had already mentioned, each of the characteristics, each of the elements within each space is assigned category. Categories of safety include things like fire alarms, sprinklers, egress paths, health, indoor air quality, temperature and heat issues. Things like plumbing fixtures that aren't to code fall into the health category. Maintenance and infrastructure are two categories that talk about if an item can be repaired. In other words, the item itself can sort of remain but be fixed, versus infrastructure, which is something that's more involved and would require replacement. And then again, the importance, some of this is subjective, but again, we tried to look at everything with a lens of does whatever the issue, the characteristic that might need improvement, is it supporting what needs to happen in that particular space? So if it's a classroom, how important would it be? Is it essential, desirable, et cetera? So we're going to kind of page through each school. Now we're zooming back out in terms of big picture. The database was the little picture, all of the details and elements, and so putting it in kind of a much bigger perspective, each of the schools, and I am going to try not to read every single bullet point, but again, just to give you an idea of the condition of your schools at this point in time. The high school is your second oldest building in the district. Built in 1959, several additions, and just again, the big picture issues in the high school. There's handicap accessibility, undersized spaces, and Phil will go into a bit more detail about this, but your undersized spaces often are the teaching spaces, so classrooms, science labs, and also that includes tech ed, the library, and admin. Upgrades for 21st century teaching and learning, that will be a common bullet point in each of the schools that we know you want to go towards, and we certainly would recommend. Security updates, technology upgrades, no air conditioning, no sprinkler system, and again, a common theme here, many engineering systems beyond their useful lives. So plumbing systems that have just had it, electrical systems that are at capacity, et cetera. For the high school, and again, there'll be more discussion of this, but things that are under discussion: comprehensive renovation, a replacement school, consideration of essential renovations if there is no big project, and finally, things like 21st century teaching and learning elements. So as Phil had mentioned, things that it could be portable, like furniture, could be looked at in the short term. Moving on to your middle school, Birchland Park is obviously your newest school, built in 2000, and as you would expect, very few bullet points from a standpoint of things that really need to be considered or upgraded. But technology, obviously, is one that's always going to fall on the list, likely. Some minor interior modifications, just very few essential items. And moving to your elementary schools. And again, I'm just going to note where the bullet points vary. But essentially, two of your elementary schools, Mountain View and Meadowbrook, have portable classrooms that were always intended to be temporary, but have now been in place for quite some time, that really do require replacement. There's handicap accessibility issues. The undersized spaces in the three elementary schools, unlike in the high school, are really more in the public areas. So the gym, art and music, the library, admin, custodial and maintenance are considered undersized. Again, the upgrades for security, 21st century learning, no air conditioning, no sprinkler system, and the engineering systems beyond their useful life. Maple Shade, oldest school in the district, built in 1955. Very much so the same issues at this school. And finally, Meadowbrook, the one element I wanted to note in particular here, besides mentioning again the four classroom portable that really is at its end in terms of requiring replacement. Meadowbrook is a school that, unlike the other two elementary schools, has not had a comprehensive exterior envelope upgrade. So it still has its 1969 single pane windows and doors, those orange and yellow panels. Those are all obviously original. The other two elementary schools have been upgraded to improve energy efficiency, and the envelope changed. Okay, I think with that, turn it back over to Phil.
So we have all this information. We have interviewed teachers. We've been into every building, in every room in every building. We understand what the maintenance issues are, what the technical issues are of the building envelope. We understand, we've looked at the curriculum and how the curriculum uses space within the schools. And so we have all these different pieces that are coming in and coming together, and we start developing options. And so what we've done is we've said, working with the administration and with the steering committee, that let's look at this in two rather broad phases, and there would be multiple pieces within each phase. But in broad phases, we're looking at phase 1 over the next 5 years, and phase 2 going from 5 out 15 plus years into the future. And we've identified the targets for phase 1 as a capital project at the high school. And we'll get into what does that mean. But a capital project at the high school, essential renovations to the middle school and the 3 elementary schools, including replacement of portables at the 2 elementary schools that still have those trailer portables. And then 21st century upgrades to the middle school and 3 elementary schools. And those are categories or pieces that make up phase 1. Phase 2 identifies that there really needs to be capital projects at the 3 elementary schools. And we haven't tried to phase those. That's looking out quite a ways. But we have to recognize that they're in a condition that is going to need a capital project of some sort off into the future. So we've identified the high school as the major component capital project of phase 1. So the obvious question is, why the high school and not the 3 elementary schools? And it really is a matter of how teaching and learning takes place in the space. We've identified that in the elementary schools, the classroom size is approximately the size that the MSBA, the Massachusetts School Building Authority, identifies in their guidelines for the appropriate type of size for those grades. Again, the shortcomings are in those public spaces. At the high school, almost all teaching spaces are undersized. And that is really the primary driver here. Classrooms range anywhere from 12% undersized to 38% undersized. Science rooms range anywhere from 24% undersized to 41% undersized. And so when we're looking at all of these spaces in this building that are smaller than the recommended guidelines, that really became the driving force behind the need to put the high school as the first capital project. We've identified other things like the special education areas are significantly undersized, and technology areas are also, tech ed areas are also significantly undersized. So flipping through some photographs of your spaces. Again, the typical classrooms are undersized, and I've already talked about the very inflexible tablet armchairs in the schools. So this is really set up around teacher-focused rather than student-centric. Science labs that are not only small and out of date in configuration, but very inflexible. And the idea here was that you went to lab maybe once a week and you studied in a classroom during the week for 4 days and went to lab once a week. The idea behind contemporary science education is that the lecture or discussion takes place in the same room as the lab, so that at any time during that period, you can change from a teaching lecture discussion mode to a lab mode. You can do it every day if you want, and you need that you need a larger space. You need a much more flexible space in order to do that. We're looking at mechanical pieces that are significantly out of date. These unit ventilators are original to many of them are original to the school. You can't find parts for them anymore. They're literally making parts as needed. We're talking about very simplistic, in many cases, temperature control and ad hoc ventilation. And certainly there's a need for air conditioning, certainly in some of, at least in some of the spaces. And so when that happens, it's typically taking the form of a window rattler, and that's been the case in the elementary schools as well. Overcrowded teacher support areas, and again, this is an area where an awful lot more activity is going to be taking place, where that interdisciplinary teacher planning is going, and overcrowded academic spaces. Typical classrooms have 2, sometimes 3, but most often 2 outlets in a classroom. And so now we're trying to support contemporary technology in spaces where we're having to run lots of wires and lots of plug strips. When we get onto the elementary schools, we do have things like non-conforming accessible ramps and the portable classrooms, portable trailer modulars that are out of date. And some of these are the issues that would also be taking place during phase 1. At Meadowbrook, as mentioned, the original exterior walls and other pieces of the exterior envelope that are deteriorating. And so all of this starts to add up to capital projects. Capital projects are made up of a number of different pieces. We typically think of the construction cost as the cost of a project. That's what we refer to as bricks and mortar. That's what you're paying the general contractor. So it includes general conditions and contingencies and construction escalation, swing space for modulars. That makes up about 75 to 80% of the cost. There's also another 20 to 25% of the cost that is what we refer to as associated costs, made up of fees and furnishings and equipment, technology, testing, and all these other types of elements that go into the overall cost. So you add that, and we wind up with project costs. Everything that we're going to be talking about from now on is going to be dealt with in project costs. So for phase 1, we've identified each of the schools across here, and the idea is that the capital project for the high school takes place here. If it's a building replacement, it would be a smaller building than we're currently in, according to the MSBA guidelines. And we've reviewed that with the curriculum, analyzed the curriculum, and the curriculum will in fact fit into this smaller area. And we've identified a square foot cost. So that comes out to roughly an $82 million project cost. We've added costs, 10 million for a new pool and 2 million to replace central administration. That's one option. Another option could be renovation of this building. If we were renovating the building, it comes in at a lower cost per square foot, but there's more square footage. So we would have to be renovating more area of the building simply because it's here. And so when you take the larger area times the smaller cost, you do come out with a smaller number of 73 million, but one expects that normally one would expect, gee, isn't a renovation so much less expensive? It is somewhat less expensive, but if you're renovating more area, that number's going back up. We've identified costs to renovate the pool at 3 million and another $1.5 million for central admin. So these are two options of capital project for the high school. The other area we've identified is for essential costs. If you weren't doing this, and this is we'll talk about this later, this is something that is participated in by the MSBA. If you were just doing the essential projects, you could be spending upwards of $30 million unreimbursed in this building, that just to take care of all of those things that we are identifying in the database itself. At Birchland Middle School, we're looking at essential projects. So back to this, if you were doing one of these, you wouldn't be doing this. As a matter of fact, we would make sure that we would really look to see if any money needs to be spent here, or to really keep that to an absolute minimum if one of these moves forward. But we're identifying what, if you don't do one, you have to do another. At the middle school, we've identified $340,000. At Maple Shade, $4 million in essentials. Another $5 million at Mountain View, plus $485 for replacement of the modulars. And at Meadowbrook, $10 million plus $800,000 for replacement of the modulars. And so we're going to also talk about furnishings and technology. And we'll do that coming up. So in phase 2, it assumes that all of this has already taken place, and that there would be then, again, you'd be faced with options, and that's far enough out that we really don't want to be speculating on that. We discussed it, but it's a little too far out to actually be creating the options of whether or not to replace a building or to renovate a building. These are looking out 5 to 15 years out. In 21st century teaching and learning, furniture and technology, these are things that you can take with you. We're looking at furnishings in the range of $500,000 at the high school, $120,000 at Maple Shade, $150 at Mountain View, and $230 at Meadowbrook. In terms of technology, there have been upgrades to the wireless systems at each of the schools over the last year. So that's helpful. But if you were to go to a one-to-one environment, further upgrades are anticipated.
Thanks, Phil. I'm just going to go back for a minute to this cost slide. I want to make sure people understand some of the factors on here. The essential items that were reviewed do not improve the educational environment. They don't deal with the undersized classrooms. They do not deal with the educational adjacencies. They are simply improving the systems, the mechanical systems, the electrical systems, as well as some structural issues and code issues that you have. So I want people to understand that that essential items list was developed in order to say what needs to be done to this building as a facility to keep it going, not necessarily from an educational point of view. On the elementary schools, it's very similar, except one of the things that is included in the essential items for the elementary schools is a reconfiguration of the front doors for many of those schools to get better visual access out. So I just want people to understand that. One other comment on between a building replacement and a comprehensive renovation. The renovation project does take longer, so you probably expected to see a bigger delta between the cost of those two buildings. Renovation, you're leapfrogging around the building, you have to get swing space. Swing space is not reimbursed, so renting 30 modulars to have 30 classrooms on the site so you can free up a portion, that has a cost impact for leasing over 2 to 3 years, 3 to 4 years, whatever that time frame is. So that does change the delta between a renovation and a new, and there's a lot of information behind these numbers, which we have and we will share in the final report. So if people do want more information, it is there. So this is an example of the debt exclusion option. People were asking, what does that mean for us? And just if we were to say a comprehensive capital project at the high school, whether it's a renovation or a new addition, made an assumption of a certain dollar amount, what that appears. We've assumed an MSBA reimbursement of 55%. That's what you received from the MSBA back in 2008 when you received the grant for the modulars. Not sure if it'd be the same rate. It changes every year. It's based on Department of Revenue poverty factors, wealth factors, and the percentage of free school lunches. But we're trying to gain something that we can look at an example of. So these numbers are not something you should write down. This is not guaranteed what it's going to be. This is just saying a what-if scenario. Obviously, with the current interest rate on a 20-year bond, there's an assumption of $1.88 for based on above and beyond based on the debt exclusion. Oh, Phil, this is yours. Sorry, I took over where I shouldn't have. Eager.
Lorraine fills in all my gaps. So back to talking about the learning environment of the future, and this is a diagram showing classrooms, and this classroom set up in a conventional manner, all facing forward. And for those teachers who want to continue teaching that way, that's fine. But within these classrooms, we've also created 4 teaching walls within the classroom. And so the furniture in here and here and here is the same as the furniture in here. So, and it's lightweight, it's ergonomic, so it can be moved around quickly, so you can actually change from class period to class period, from that configuration to that, to that, to that, or anything in between. So the idea is that that a 21st century learning environment is a whole lot more flexible and a lot more student-oriented. So here's a classroom that that was completed last year. That is was actually the actual built environment from that perspective model that you just saw. The idea that all spaces in the school, all spaces on the campus can be used for teaching and learning. And here's a very simple outdoor classroom. It actually includes a slate chalkboard because it's outside, but it's also wireless. And this is as simple as boulders and stone dust and a little bit of definition, and a space that's used quite a lot. And as we talked to teachers, it was something that teachers were very interested in having the ability to use. The idea that you need other types of spaces besides classroom. This shows a large group instruction space where you can bring 2 or 3 classes together. That room will hold about 100 people. And so you could bring guest lecturers in, you can do project work in there, you can leave stuff up on the walls. Similarly, you need small group instruction spaces, and some of them might be rooms, some of them might be alcoves within a corridor, but the idea that learning takes place everywhere is something that's going on in lots of schools today. auditorium that is a good performance space. This happens to be a renovation. As you look at it for a school up in Turner's Falls. This happened, but as we look at this auditorium, it could just as easily be a brand new auditorium with the looks of that as it would be a renovation. Libraries that are very student-oriented, cafeterias that are light and airy, another library that's full of technology and light. Centrally located, it's the intellectual heart of the school and typically is physically located in the center of the school, both floors and horizontally. And now we're back to Lorraine. What'd I miss?
You're good. You're good. Sorry. So you're probably saying, why are we talking about it now? Projects take a long time. So we would not assume that you would go this alone. We'd assume that you would look to the state to participate in funding. So I want to let everyone understand that that takes a long time, a long process. One of the key benefits from the MSBA when they took over from the SBA is they now pay as you go. So the towns bond their share, not the whole project cost, which was the way it was in the past. But to be in the MSBA process, you have to follow their guidelines. They have distinct submissions, they have distinct timeframes, and it does take a long time. The first thing you have to have is a master plan, which is what you're doing right now. You're developing a master plan, you're looking at all your schools across the system, you're identifying your needs, and you're putting timeframes on when you're going to address things. From there, the school submits what's called a statement of interest form, where the school, without any help from anybody else, the administration submits a list of where they feel the deficiencies are in the buildings and what they need and what they think they need, without saying, I need a new school. You say, I need solutions. I need larger classrooms. I need systems that are functional. You're not saying, I need a new building. You're not saying, I need a renovation. You're defining your problem and what you need to improve it within the environment. It takes anywhere from a year, from 10 months to a year, for the MSBA to take that statement of interest and connect with the town and say, yes, I've read it, I agree with you, let's move to the next phase. The next phase is what's called the eligibility period. The district needs to get some paperwork done with the state, they agree on an enrollment projection, and then they have to go out and get the funds to hire an owner's project manager and a designer to do the next step, which is a feasibility study and schematic design. Feasibility and schematic design can take anywhere from 10 months to a year, a little longer depending on some districts and how much you want to analyze stuff. After that, you go to the town, you go back to the MSBA, to their board meeting, you get them to approve your solution, and you go back to the town and you ask for an appropriation of funds. Just so everyone understands, you ask for the whole amount even though your reimbursement is only a portion of it. So when you have that done, and if it's approved, you move on to the next stage, which is designing the building. So you go through design and contract documents, you bid it, and you construct it. Whether it's a new building or a renovation, it can take 2 to 3 years, 3 to 4 years, it all depends. But from start to finish, you're looking at about 6 years of a process before you have a final solution, whatever that solution may be. So it takes time. That's part of what we're trying to make sure people understand. It's not a solution that they're asking the towns for tomorrow. It's something long-term, and it's going to take a long time to get there. As part of the project costs, we talked about owner's fee, or architect's fees, designer's fees, OPM's fees. So what does it mean to the town for eligibility period? Nothing. There's no cost for you to submit the SOI, to talk to the MSBA, to figure out whether or not you're going to be selected. It can all be done with the information we've provided in the master plan and with the school administration. If you're then selected, you go into the next phase, which will cost approximately $1 million. After that, you define your problem, you define your solution, and if you move forward, there's additional costs, the contractor's fees, and all the project costs. So what would you get reimbursed? Hard to tell. It is all based annually. If we look at what you received in 2008, it was 55.36%. These are the official categories, how the MSBA divvies up reimbursement. They start with a base rate of 31. Then the factors that come from the DOR on a sliding scale are applied. We don't have access to those, so we can't tell what they are today. They change every year anyway, so it has to be done as you have a project. You get points for maintenance. How has the district maintained their buildings? Have you invested in your buildings? When needs have arisen, have you dealt with it? Do you have a maintenance plan? What are the procedures when something goes wrong? It's not just for the school you're asking for, it's for the district buildings. The better you do, the more you maintain your buildings, the more points you get. You can get up to 2 points. The less you maintain your buildings, the less points you get. So it's anywhere from 0 to 2. Construction manager at risk is a CM at risk. There's 2 ways to bid projects today in public construction. You can do what we call design bid build. It's a hard bid to the lowest eligible general contractor. Or you hire a construction manager. They come on during design and work with you. We would often recommend a construction manager in a phased renovation project because you want them in with you from the time you're working out the design. You want them involved in the logistics. There is a cost, a premium to that. The MSBA recognizes that. They give you an additional point for it. I will let you know the point does not cover the premium, just so everyone is aware. If you're a newly formed regional school district, you can get up to 6 points. That's not the case here. Major reconstruction or renovation, 0 to 5 points. It depends on how much you're renovating and how much of that area you're actually renovating. Overlay zoning wouldn't apply. Energy efficient green schools, every school we design today meets this requirement. It's part of the industry standard, it's easy, it's done. So those are 2 additional points. So the incentive points as we're defining them right now are 3 plus whatever factors. So we show 34, but obviously knowing that there's a big gap from the 34 to the 55, which is unknown. The pay as you go is important because in the past districts had to bond the full amount and pay the interest on the full amount, and you often received reimbursement from the SBA 7 to 10 years down the line. All the way through the process, through the feasibility study, through design, through construction, the MSBA pays their share on a monthly basis. So the district only bonds their own amount, their own share moving forward. That has a positive impact on your taxes. So many people might ask, why do I need an OPM? What is an OPM? An OPM is an owner's project manager. It became part of the law in 2004, and Massachusetts requires it, MSBA requires it for all of their state-funded schools. It's an owner's rep. They are your liaison between the district and the MSBA. They're your on-site rep during construction. They provide the clerk of the works. They provide many other options and facilities to you. The district gets to choose their OPM. The OPM then has to be approved by the MSBA. The MSBA chooses your architect, of which 3 members from the district get to be on a panel with the MSBA. So a little less option for the district in choosing their architect. So where do we go from here? From Sims Maney McKee and Margo Jones Associates point of view, we're finishing the master plan. We're going to package it. It will be available for viewing, for reading. It will be accessible through the school's website. The district will more than likely move forward with a statement of interest submission, which we're available to pull any of the information out of the master plan or the database that they need in order to submit that. And then there'll be an exercise where we showed you the essential items. And if you looked at the numbers closely across the elementary schools, there was over $25 million worth of work. Obviously, that needs to be distributed over many years. And with looking at phase 2, so we're going to help the district prioritize what should be in the next 5 years of capital planning, what large projects should be done, what small projects should be done, and what should potentially be put on hold for the potential of a bigger capital project. We don't want you spending money that you're then potentially going to renovate or take out and redo in 5 to 10 years. So we're going to assist the district in how you prioritize those. And there are going to be unforeseen things will break, things will come up, but really understanding what needs to be done now and what can wait. And are there interim fixes that can be done that will help the environment right now for the children without spending large capital investments? That's us. Gordon?
Right. So at this point, you've had a lot of information thrown at you. And it's difficult to process and digest that in a short amount of time. But if people have questions, we do have a panel up here of experts who might be able to field those questions and start a dialogue with the community, so to speak. There's a question in the back there.
My main question is, if you go the route of renovating the high school versus building a new building from scratch, are the two results and results exactly comparable, or are you pushing something like renovating the existing school besides the
The question was, if you go to a comprehensive renovation or build a new building, are the two resulting products comparable?
From the standpoint of the structure and the engineering systems, yes, they are. The idea that you'd come in and replace the mechanical system in its entirety in a comprehensive renovation, or replace the electrical system in its entirety, would be inherent in a comprehensive renovation. Where they're not comparable is in some aspects of how the classrooms rearrange. For example, there may be adjacencies that you want to create that you simply can't do because of the current arrangement of the building. So we showed, as part of our process, we showed some sketches of how you would take the library, for example, and bring it down and put it where the art rooms are. On the first floor, more centrally located, again, not ideal, but better and right-sized with access to the exterior. But some rooms you can make larger, some rooms you may not be able to make larger, and adjacencies may be difficult. So from the education side, not quite. And you would be limited to the existing footprint because the building's already too large.
Another question in the back? SOI is accepted.
That is, so I'll repeat the question just so everyone can understand it. If you submit the statement of interest this January, we're saying that you're close to 6 years out until the project is completed. That answer is yes. Yes.
Another question in the back?
So just to repeat the question, MSBA did a space needs study, is their official term for it. They came and they rated, when they took over in 2004, they rated every building in the Commonwealth. They visited every building to understand what the needs were. They rated the high school a 3. It's based on space needs for educational spaces. They don't necessarily, they overview the systems, but they don't do a detailed analysis. They no longer really use that number system. They have not updated it. They don't go back out and renovate it or reestablish it. So you're not going to get worse. You're not going to get into a grace period. They now have the statement of interest process, which is their way of saying, tell me what your problem is. So you're not in jeopardy for having not done anything based on your ratings.
Another question right here in the back?
So the question is the 55% reimbursement of the total price, or are there things the MSBA does not reimburse? There is a list of things the MSBA does not reimburse. So it starts at 55, we'll use 55 and just assume that number. 55% of the eligible project costs. So they take it from the project costs. They then put caps on a number of items. So Phil showed you the diagram with the construction costs and the associated costs. The associated costs cannot cost more than 20%. They don't reimburse you if it goes over that. The building costs, they cap at $275 a square foot. None of the schools are coming in at $275 a square foot. They are reanalyzing that number. But on top of that, they add 8% of that value towards the site costs. No high school project site can costs less than 8%. So there's always going to be a number that the town's going to pay for on the site cost side. They then pay for abatement and demolition on top of that. So when you add those, the building costs, the abatement and demolition, and the site costs, it comes out a little closer to $300 a square foot, which is still less than what some of the schools are coming in at today. They don't pay for legal fees, they don't pay for swing space, they don't pay for moving. So there's many other things they don't pay for. So they have a very detailed formulaic chart when you start plugging in all the numbers so that you have an idea exactly how much you're getting back. So if your project went forward and you did your feasibility and your schematic design, you would know exactly what they're paying for and what they wouldn't at that time. But you won't know it until you get through that process.
They reimburse for the schematic design.
And they do reimburse for the feasibility and schematic design phase as well.
So question right here, gentleman right there.
Yep. So we obviously we're in the business of. Oh, sorry. Yes. So what is the degree of certainty we have of the dollar per square foot we showed for the new building and the renovation? Because of the time frame, you're out 6 years. So we use numbers that we're using today, escalated. We haven't escalated them the whole way out because you escalate to the midpoint of construction, not the full way out. We are in the business of K-12 schools, so we have a pretty good database of information. We watch all the bids come in, whether there are projects or others. The numbers are starting to rise. I will say that you are outside the 495 belt. It does make a difference in the construction costs. They are less outside 495 than they are inside 495. So there is a benefit to you on that side of it. We're confident in the numbers we've provided based on this time frame we're saying, but that's assuming an SOI, that's assuming things fall exactly as planned.
So they're not would you say they're conservative then?
I don't think I
They're
would say
realistic.
that they're realistic. I would not say conservative. Obviously, we don't know if there's going to be another dip or another climb, but based on the current numbers coming in, they're realistic.
Right here.
So the question is, have we looked at the possibility of reducing the 6 years? The 6 years is not exactly up to us. The first year, I mean, I can tell you that the districts that submitted a statement of interest for 2013, the window opens from January 1 to April 19th. Those statement of interests have not been taken up at the state yet. So it is October 10th, and they closed on April 19th, and none of them have been taken up yet. So that first year window, we're at the mercy of the state. After that, the durations for feasibility and schematic design, 10 months is about the shortest you can do it. But again, with large projects, you want to make sure you have community involvement. You want to make sure the community is fully informed, so you don't want to rush the process, but you don't want to take too long. The only area you have an option to change is what's called the eligibility period, which is right after the state has taken up your statement of interest. They give you 270 days to get everything done. That's to get your paperwork in, to get the enrollment projections, and to get appropriation for the study. You don't have to take the full 10 months. If you can do that in less, you can save yourself time. After that, whether it's a new building or a renovation, that's all part of the study. But it's very hard to shorten the process.
There's a question in the middle, right in the back there.
The new high school will have this site, the cost of the new high school for the addition of this
Would the new high school go on this site, and would those costs include the demolition? Yes. The assumption is that new high school would go on this site. You have enough available land to do so. You don't have to then provide swing space. You're not providing busing if it's somewhere else, additional operational costs. Your fields are still here. And yes, the costs do include fully abating and demolishing the building.
And we have examples of how a new school goes on an existing site just across the river in West Springfield. The new high school under construction is one that we've designed. The new building is going up right alongside the existing building. The school is taking place in that existing building, and this winter, this coming winter, they'll take over the new building. Students will move from the old to the new, and demolition will start on the old. Also Hudson High School, a little bit further east of here. But we've done that a number of times where we've put a new building immediately adjacent to an existing building, no disruption to teaching and learning, and a very smooth transition.
Question in the back here?
Back to the other question, is there any reimbursement for the pool and district office? Is there any money there?
Is there any reimbursement for the pool and the central office and district office? No, there is not. All on the town.
Reimbursement for reconstruction?
So based on the question was, is the reimbursement for new or renovation the same? It is based on you get additional points for renovation depending on the amount you renovate, but just the one caveat is you're renovating more. So if you're renovating this building, it's bigger than you need, so you may actually end up leveling out. Just want to be clear.
Question right here, gentleman right there.
More of a personal opinion than a question. I'm a school administrator in West Springfield. I live here in East Long Meadow. I've seen the process from the transition from an old building built a similar time to a brand new one that opens up in February. I want to offer my support. I want to say that the projections that you folks have given match quite realistically the projections that have been the cost of West Springfield. We're excited about our new building, so too are our students. To not take this opportunity, to not jump on what frankly is a fleeting one, because we know that the longer that we wait, the lesser that we could see that reimbursement come. I want to encourage the folks in the school committee, our superintendent, and the folks here in this room just to consider not passing up what all of our surrounding communities are taking advantage of. This really is a wonderful opportunity with realistic costs that is already providing benefits and increased property values just across the river West Springfield. Certainly.
What was your reimbursement rate since it was
About 58%.
58%?
Yep.
I think a question back here, and then we come back here.
Okay, with the elementary schools, did you look at, instead of renovating two, instead of 25 million, building one new one, making one building versus the two? I mean,
The question was, in Phase 2, which goes out 15-plus years, as we look at our elementary schools, did we look at possibly combining and building a new one? If I'm getting your question correct. Yeah. Many different options were discussed, but given the fact that we're looking at possibly 15-plus years to get to that, we left them as discussion items, and we haven't gone through and costed that out. There's a question here.
I may have missed this, but is there a difference in terms of timeframe for renovation versus construction in high school? And also, is this information from this PowerPoint available for people who aren't here?
The information from the PowerPoint, I'll answer that first, is going out on LCAT. So I think it's going to continue to run or loop. And if you don't have LCAT, we will make sure that we get the PowerPoint from SMMA, excuse me, and we'll get it up on our webpage. All right? And there was another question in there. Time frame. The time frame of a renovation might be a little longer because, as both Phil and Lorraine have explained, you're going to have to free up an area to renovate, which means that you're going to have to set up portable trailer classrooms, and you're going to continue that around the school, so the time frame would be longer.
Yes, yes.
Experts say I got that one right. Any final questions?
Okay, in the back.
Yep, in the back.
I realize this is not your primary focus, but I'm curious how this all fits with the capital plan for the rest of the town.
It's an excellent question. How does it all fit with the capital plan for the rest of the town? Well, going back when I first began as superintendent, so 3 years and a few months ago, we started to discuss with the capital planning committee doing a study like this. The discussions we continue to get into is what's behind this project, where does it take us, how do we know the costs are accurate, and a lot of the information in the year I began came from a facility study that was completed back in '99 and 2000. And so capital planning has worked with us over the last few years on a few different projects, but the projects, as you've seen in the PowerPoint, continue to mount, the number of them, and they agreed that this is a study they wanted to fund so that we can then drive capital planning for the school department through this master plan and facility study. But you're right, we have to look, that's why your phased options are, say, first phase 1 to 6 years, and then you're going out 15 plus years, because we're part of the town, and we want to make sure that we continue to work with all town departments and recognize all town needs.
You want to mention that meeting we had last week, 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago, Phil's reminded me, 2 weeks ago we did meet with the municipal boards to discuss just that. You're welcome. Maybe one final question? Mr. Falk?
If the town decided to build a renovation route, based on the current structural components of this building, how far projection would the renovation take us with the current structural features be sufficient?
The question is, if you were to renovate the building, how does the building structurally measure up? Essentially, is that am I getting that correct? As part of a comprehensive renovation, you would have to upgrade the structure to current code. So this building does not have, for example, seismic restraint in it. So you'd have to take apart portions of the walls, get back to the structure, and upgrade that. So it would be, by time a comprehensive renovation is done, it would have a structural upgrade to it that would be a lasting structural upgrade.
I think that was our final
Any other
question.
questions? I just wanted to say, on behalf of the school committee, we realize, first of all, this process has been worthwhile. It's certainly validated what we already know as a community, that our schools are aging, that we have some things to do. We're not naive to the fact that these numbers are large numbers, and we need input from the community as to what the community wants. Yay or nay, big projects, small projects, elementary schools, high schools. The five of us have our own opinions. The leadership has their opinions. Leadership team has their opinions. But the more input we can get from the community in situations like this, emails, letters, phone calls, whatever we can get, will help us to begin to drive the process. Because as we've noticed, time is of the essence if we want to start doing things, as it always is. Because as you start talking 6 years, many of us have kids that it may affect. And many of our kids who are in the system may not see that within 6 years. It's just the reality of it. But the reality is, it's time to start to do something, whether it be renovations, talk of new construction. There's options. We have options. We started to present them. The louder people get, the more we hear, the more direction we'll have. So I would ask that we get that from as many folks as we can going forward. And The other thing I'm just going to mention, and then certainly we can pop 2 more questions in. We have some students here today. If anyone's interested in a tour, we did offer that of the high school. We don't always get an opportunity to walk through the buildings. Certainly, if anybody wants to do that, we could probably meet over by the maybe by the water, the refreshment table.
Take the food with you.
And Gordon's telling us to take the food, so please do. I'm going to grab an orange juice on my way out, I think. A couple questions, and then we can move along.
Sure. I mean, I agree with what you're saying about generating interest. How can we do a better job of getting the word out? Because there were many people I mentioned about the meeting that had no idea about this meeting. I think we need to do a better job of getting the word out so that we get a larger group than what we have here. Because the project won't get done if we don't have the support from the community.
Sure,
So,
agreed. And so the question is, how do we get the word out to more people? In talking with our experts, this is actually a decent crowd for this kind of event, so thank you for coming out for that. Gordon did a Connect Ed to all the parents. We hope that's helpful. We're starting to try to gather email addresses because we know that's the way to get to everybody. But a lot of it's word of mouth. We were in the reminder on it. What else did we do? LCAT, it's rotating through on our website as well. What else?
It's on the marquee sign outside.
Marquee sign outside out front. So yeah, whatever. Any suggestions? We're open to suggestions. Deirdre's on Facebook for the school committee a lot, and so if that helps too, let us know. We'll do whatever because we need the input. Definitely so. So yeah, question.
Yeah, along the same lines, I know many here are probably very familiar with what Long Meadow went through with the new high school, and I know there were several meetings about it and several voting times too. Is that something that will happen here? Will there be a vote essentially at the end?
So yeah, so any capital project, as far as I understand it, will require debt exclusion, a vote for debt exclusion, and that would mean a town meeting vote followed up by a ballot vote as well. And I think I have that right, Marty. Does that sound right? Okay, thank you. Yeah, Jen. Well, again, it goes back to our timeline. So we're still talking a year out, a year and a half before we'd even have a town meeting. But we'd want to, but the process would have to start. So we'd have to enter that statement of interest. And that would be, when's the next round for that due statement?
Starts in January.
So really we need to know by January the direction we want to start heading. And that's when we put that statement of interest together. And then from there, the ball gets rolling. Yes, question on the way back.
What about getting it out there? What about a table at the fall fair? Having something like that at the fall fair to kind of put it out there?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Is anybody going to the fall fair this weekend? Center town? I'll be out of town, but if we can. Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you for that. That's a great idea. Anything else? Yeah.
Would any of this impact any of the athletic fields or the grounds or any of the tennis courts? Something with the tennis courts that's going up?
Well, so getting a little bit ahead of where we should be, but the short and the long of it is, if we were to look to do a new building here, it would be on the grounds where the existing fields are. I mean, there's only so much. So for a short period of time, we would look at probably the back space, and that's just a guess. We wouldn't touch the turf, obviously. That's the main project. And the tennis courts, if that project happens, we would look to put it in our best guess where it would not be impacted, because we would not want to rip them up if they were to go in. So, yes, please. Yeah, sure.
And since you've done these projections, I'm sure you've looked at the town population, and I'm just wondering if a vote were to come up, how much of the town population is families with younger kids versus seniors who are likely to not want to spend money on a new high school?
Yeah, great question.
We actually have that in the report. I don't have the
It's in the report.
Yeah.
So we have data specific, and the question is the makeup of the town: families, older population, younger population. We have it in the report, so we will have that available. But it's all in what individuals want, and to categorize even what older folks want, younger folks want, kids with children or students in the school or not. Phil.
I think that it's too quick to say that the older population won't support a school. Our experience, we're in many communities, and over the years, and we find that the older population very often
Thank you, Phil. What's that?
Real estate values go up.
Gordon's giving a plug for the real estate values as well, so it's true. They go up, you know. So these are all things to consider. You know, we all have our opinions, but we need to hear others' opinions. I'll say it again. So as much as that as we can get, we're up for it. So thank you all for coming out and participating, and we'll see what happens. Thanks so much.